The IDF's ground offensive in Gaza has entered what appears to be the decisive stage. What can we expect from the war in the Middle East and perhaps beyond? Thomas Friedman, a three-time Pulitzer Prize winner at the New York Times columnist, will help us find the answer to this question and many others. Good afternoon, Thomas. It's a pleasure to speak with you live on TV Rain.
How are you? Great to be with you.
First of all, I would like to ask you about the situation on the ground in the Gaza Strip. I saw a piece of yours in the New York Times which led me to understand that you don't exactly condone the IDF's ground offensive. What is your opinion of it now?
I still think I would have opted for a much more limited approach. I would have focused on rescuing the hostages. I would have called it Operation Rescue Grandma. Kept all the focus on the hostages that Hamas had abducted, certainly target the leadership. But I think rushing into Gaza could well turn out to be a huge mistake. Iran wants nothing more than to embed Israel in a strategic overreach into the morass of Gaza. And I hope that Israel has not walked into that trap. You have to start, Olga, if I could say, at 30,000 feet for your audience. There are two giant transitions that are trying to happen in the world today. One is for Ukraine to join the West, and the other was for Israel to join the East. Okay? Ukraine was trying to join the West through NATO and the European Union, and Vladimir Putin was refusing to let that happen and use violent force in order to stop it. Israel was getting close to joining the East through the normalization process being organized by the United States and Saudi Arabia. Iran, I'm sure with the much satisfaction of Russia and Hamas, wanted to stop Israel from joining the East. And so those are the two big things happening in the world today. And we need to keep our eye on the prize. For Israel, the prize was joining the East, understanding Iran, Russia, and Hamas didn't want that to happen. And I fear that going into Gaza now will make that more difficult.
As far as I understand, Israel does not plan on prolonging its presence in the Gaza Strip any longer than they absolutely have to. If anything, they would like to perform a rapid military operation to destroy the terrorists. But in your opinion, such an operation is not possible. Is that correct?
Well, even the Israelis will tell you they don't think it can be done quickly. I mean, they're talking about months to actually go in and to decapitate Hamas. You probably have to literally devastate most of Gaza. Then who will take it off their hands? Well, there are only two alternatives, basically. One is that the Arab League or the group of Arab states agree to go in and manage Gaza for Israel's behalf, maintain security there, deal with the civilian population. I don't think that's going to happen. Please raise your hand if you're an Arab country who wants to go in and help manage Gaza. If it isn't the Arab country, there needs to be the Palestinian Authority with Israel in the background, the PA, the more responsible Palestinians who have recognized Israel based in Ramallah. But for them to come in and manage Gaza, Israel would have to agree to a two-state solution. They're not going to do it on Israel's behalf. And that runs into Netanyahu's own coalition. And this has always been the contradiction. Netanyahu wants justice for Gaza. I understand that. I respect that. Well, he wants a settlement kingdom in the West Bank. I don't understand that, and I don't respect that, and neither does the world. So how are you going to tell the world, stand with us while we get justice in Gaza, but ignore what we are doing in the West Bank? That's a core contradiction. And so that's why I've said, who is going to govern Gaza after Israel takes over and evicts Hamas? Gaza is to Israel, the equivalent of Israel taking over Gaza would be like the United States occupying half of Mexico. That's a hugely expensive overreach.
Томас, в мире
Thomas, the global opinions regarding the crisis in the Middle East are as varied as it gets. Most world leaders took the stance that can be summed up in the following way. The Hamas attack was utterly unacceptable, but that doesn't mean that the civilian population of Gaza must bear collective responsibility for this aggression. How can such a complicated problem be solved, especially since most are convinced that after the operation of IDFs is over, they will not be a force capable of taking charge in Gaza, nor would anyone want to become such a force? Is there a solution to this certainly complicated problem?
I don't see a way out, particularly right now, Olga, and which is why I didn't want to go in. When I can't see the way out, it's why I was very wary about going in. We did that in America after 9/11. We rushed off into places we didn't understand, and it took us, in the case of Afghanistan, 20 plus years to get out. And so I just really wish Israel had stepped back and thought a little more deeply at first about what to do the morning after the morning after. I understand the pain, I understand the urgency, but I just worry that this was a trap by Hamas and by Iran to enmesh Israel into a strategic overreach inside Gaza, and that worries me a lot.
There are other opinions. For example, some experts believe that if Israel were to falter, Iran would have utilized it to its advantage. But of course, this discourse can go on forever. But I hope I have enough time to ask you about Russia's role in this conflict and Putin's personal stakes in it. Thomas, surely you are aware that a Hamas delegation visited Moscow recently. What are your impressions of the actions and statements of the Russian leader in this context?
Well, something big happened here with Russia. It threw its support behind Hamas, a murderous, a fundamentalist jihadist organization dedicated in its own charter to the elimination of Israel. Now, Putin did this after Israel, under his pressure and request, had refrained from arming Ukraine in the Ukraine war because Israel needed to deconflict with Russia's air force when it wants to attack pro-Iranian and Iranian forces in Syria. And so Israel didn't want to risk that relationship. And so it deferred to Putin's request. There'll be a lot of anger at Israel now and a willingness, I think, to reconsider at least whether to more openly support Ukraine in the war, because Putin has really gone over to the dark side.
We are seeing a serious spike in anti-Semitism following Putin taking a side in the conflict in the Middle East. But anti-Semitism is on the rise not only in Russia, although the Russian part of it is admittedly different to the rest. Nonetheless, the global rise of anti-Semitism is alarming. What do you think can come out of it, especially when on the same Friday Jewish schools are being closed around the world? You know, it is becoming very unsettling.
It's very worrying, and this was never, Putin, among the decent things he did was never go down that route, never throw in his lot with an organization dedicated in its own charter to the destruction of the Jewish state. And it only shows me how much Putin has lost his way, how desperate he is for friends after launching a failed invasion of Ukraine. It says so much more about him than anything else.
Are you expecting the anti-Semitic wave around the world to keep growing and getting more serious, Thomas? Do you think this wave will keep sweeping up more and more territories and societies?
I certainly worry about it. You know, in the age of social media, it's just so easy in artificial intelligence to generate, whether it's anti-Semitism or anti-gayism or any of these issues that you like. And I certainly worry about that. And when leaders of the world, like Putin, who you expect to have a minimum of responsibility, behave this way and embrace Hamas. I mean, we see this on American college campuses now. People treating Hamas as if it was just some little anti-colonial movement that only wanted a state of its own. And I think it's a great misreading of this organization, and it's shameful and it's disturbing.
It is shameful, and it is often informed by ignorance on the subject, which only leads us to need to keep talking about this. And I wanted to thank you for having this discussion with us live on TV Rain. This has been Thomas Friedman, American journalist, 3-time Pulitzer Prize winner, and columnist for the New York Times.
We operated in Russia for 12 years, and the government tried to get rid of us 3 times. They got us on the 6th day of the war in Ukraine.
Мы временно приостанавливаем работу телеканала.
We left Russia, but we kept going. We have now decided to tell the truth about Russia, the war, and Russian society in English as well.
Kherson is Putin's 3rd major defeat in a row.
What is wrong with the Russian army?
Stories no one else can tell you. Hear it right from the source. Subscribe to our channel.